The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win, banksjones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, on the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
Boy, we have a ton on the show today, including those Tennessee players most likely to win postseason awards. James Pierce, Nico Iamaleava have been named among the top 100 players by a major media outlet. But should there be more? If not Brew, who? I'm not saying that Brew McCoy is going to befall any sort of injury like he did last year. I do think, though, talking to some people last night, that you're going to see a lot of people rotate coverage on him as the season goes on. So does a Chris Brazzell or a Squirrel White end up being Tennessee's leading receiver? I think it's at least worth the topic of conversation and maybe a good thing for the Vols because you have a known commodity in Brew. This day in Tennessee sports history, the ESPN FPI, which has been hit or miss with the Vols, has Tennessee at 8.5 wins. We'll discuss that. Then the Josh Petty recruitment. For those of you recruiting fans, you're going to have a nice show today because we're going to discuss why the Vols passed on Josh Petty, the offensive lineman that went to Georgia Tech for $800,000, and why I think Tennessee made the exact right move. The stat of the day and college football teams on the decline. Check out offthehooksports.com for more. If you don't mind, will you please hit the like and subscribe button? Caleb Calhoun, how are you, sir?
I'm good. How you doing, Dave?
Never better. We're what now, 16 days? It's too bad that Tennessee doesn't have a former football player that wore the number 16, or we could say that many days till football time in Tennessee. Oh, wait, maybe they did.
Well, unfortunately, he played before Taylor Swift was watching football, so not a lot of people know who he is.
Right. It is Peyton Manning days until Tennessee. And Peyton, have you noticed, has kind of been out there a little bit more? I noticed he did a World of Boz that's being pushed out there. I think it's kind of old, and he was involved with the pilot. He had a video out there for the pilot partnership with Neyland Stadium. Are we about to get a lot more Peyton Manning in our lives? I believe so.
I think Peyton Manning's just the ultimate PR person. He is a guy who likes being famous, and he likes being beloved, and he's going to do whatever he can to be beloved by the people he's associated with himself with over the years. That's Peyton Manning. This is why, as Jimmy Hyams pointed out yesterday, he was willing to sell the Greg Schiano hire. And then when everybody got mad about it, he's like, oh, wait, I don't know what you're talking about. New phone, who dis?
Yeah, he likes to be liked. And there's nothing wrong with that. Most people like to be liked to some extent. So James Pierce and Nico Iamaleava were named by a top media entity as two of the top 100 players in college football. But I'm going to be honest, that's disrespectful. We'll get to that, but it's time for today's tough question. And today's tough question is right now.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Today's tough question brought to you by our friends at Work Trucks. I'll tell you more about that here momentarily. The question is on the YouTube page. Want to hear you vote. And that is, the question is, who is Tennessee's best Vol not named Nico or James? And the choices are Squirrel White, Cooper Mays, Brew McCoy, or other. So we'll get to Nico and James Pierce making a top 100 list. Kudos for them, but I think Tennessee got shortchanged. Would you say that James Pierce and Nico are the two best Vols? And we're talking talent. We're not necessarily talking experience, but it does factor into it. If so, who would be number 3? So loaded question, poor journalism on my part. Caleb, I ask you 2 questions at once, but I know you can handle it.
Well, if we were not factoring in injuries, I would actually have Brew McCoy at number 2 behind James Pierce. But because he's coming back from injury, I have to drop him a little bit in terms of talent. But I still have him at number 3, and I've got Cooper Mays right there. I mean, I know Cooper Mays is smart, but Dave, for playing center, smart is part of your talent. I mean, that's kind of a crucial part of playing center is being smart. And in this day and age in college football, you brought it up all the time with the freeze plays that the one and the only Peyton Manning invented. Like, all that literally put more pressure on the center than maybe ever before in the sport.
You're so right. Being smart is such an incredible advantage that we don't talk about. Here's another one, leverage. Yeah, Cooper Mays reminds me of Scott Wells. Do you remember Scott Wells?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Arguably the best pro center of all time from Tennessee.
Yeah, the one thing I learned from Scott Wells is that you want a center who has played multiple sports because they understand body movement and they understand leverage. So a lot of people might not know that Cooper Mays was a standout third baseman, that he played other sports. I don't know specifically if he wrestled, but Scott Wells wrestled. And Wells and Mays remind me of each other because of their ability to get leverage up underneath the pads. I'm getting a little excited. This football season's right around the corner. So they do that better than anyone. A lot of times that's because you're undersized. But I stood next to Coop recently. I don't know if he's at a growth spurt or what. I know he's like 25 years old now, but he is a solid 6'3". So it's not as if he's incredibly undersized, which was the moniker he carried when he came out of recruiting in high school.
Right. And leverage, right, is huge and the most underrated part of playing an interior offensive lineman position. By the way, that can be crucial for ends, too. I mean, Dwight Freeney. Honestly, Dwight Freeney did not have a defensive end's body. But Dwight Freeney probably was the best leveraged edge rusher I think I've ever seen in football.
I would challenge you with Reggie White because leverage is that one-armed throw that he had. That was getting underneath and low and be able to move people with one arm. But I'll give you Freeney.
But Reggie White had a freak body, though.
That's true. Freeney had to rely on his quickness and that sort of thing. Reggie White could rely on a couple of different things. All right. Brought to you by Workout Anytime. That's today's tough question. A couple of other guys I want to discuss that are on the list, Squirrel White in particular, and work trucks. I got to remind you, work trucks have trucks that are actually available, trucks that help you maximize profits, because if you're a contractor, you know how important it is to have the right work vehicle. The perfect work vehicle doesn't break down, has all the space to carry what you need. That's what Work Trucks is intent on offering, while other dealerships just can't do it. Contracting is about time. Work Trucks saves you time, less back and forth trips, and trucks that pass the highest standards to be put to work. The process is also quick and easy, quick like Squirrel White, who we're going to talk about, when choosing a vehicle for work trucks, cargo vans, utility body trucks with an iPod work bodies installed, pickup trucks of all sizes, and anything special like cranes or dump trucks. Work Truck supplies vehicles to people just like you and get you back on the road tomorrow. No dealership runaround. Work Trucks with an X. That's a fact that you have to get in contact with them if you're a contractor. Work Trucks carries the trucks that your business has to have. You need Work Trucks. Knoxville, Clinton Highway, downtown Birmingham. For the entire inventory, go to worktruckswithanXLLC.com. WorktruckswithanXLLC.com. They will find the truck that fits your needs to a T. WorktrucksLLC.com. Proud supporters of the Vols. What about Squirrel White? Is he in this conversation, or is he a really good player who's a bit of a novelty because of his size?
Squirrel White, no, he's not in this conversation. He's kind of a rare athlete, but he's not in this conversation at all.
Okay, so let's take a look at Vols most likely to win the postseason awards. You had a list of 5. Let's go through those. Brew McCoy winning a postseason award. Now, coming off an injury, he's not going to get preseason hype. How much does that hurt him?
I think that hurts him a lot. The other thing that hurts him is that with the way Tennessee is defended, you don't really know exactly how many chances he's going to get. Going into 2022, we thought Cedric Tillman was the star receiver. He got hurt. Brew became a solid go-to player to replace him. But what happened was they rolled coverage so much that cleared the field for Jalen Hyatt to do what Jalen Hyatt did. I think, Dave, you and I both agree that Brew McCoy is the reason Jalen Hyatt won the Biletnikoff in 2022.
I agree.
And yeah, that's the big thing with Brew. But still, because of what happened in 2022 and last year with Squirrel White, I think Brew McCoy could get a lot more looks this year.
I agree with that. Now, then you have Squirrel White. Could he be up for postseason awards?
Yes. For the reason that Jalen Hyatt was 2 years ago. If teams roll coverage for Brew, and you talk about dictating coverage all the time, if they roll coverage for Brew towards Brew, Squirrel White is a heck of a receiver. And he actually plays physically like a wideout. And this is where Dave, he's got that straight line speed, but I'm going to throw this name out. I'm going to throw two names out. He also has like the Peerless Price Cedric Wilson mentality where, both of those receivers were 5'11"?
Yes.
But they played like 6'3" wideouts, didn't they?
They did.
Squirrel White has that in him too, if you look at the way he plays. And if they roll coverage to Brew, you could see Squirrel White make tons of plays this year.
Agree with that. I don't know that he's going to be able to win an award, though, because Tennessee is going to be good with Brazzell and Tennessee's going to be good with Brew McCoy. I think they're going to spread the wealth a little bit. Cooper Mays, depends on what you consider an award. He will receive the honor, I believe, at the end of the year of being the at the very least, all SEC center, could push for All-American, could win a number of awards. If this offensive line stays healthy, they could theoretically win. I believe it's the Joe Moore Award for best offensive line, but that's a big if, Caleb.
Yeah, the thing with Cooper is I think Cooper is a very strong candidate. Dave, I think he should be the favorite to be the Remington winner this year. I actually think you could get great odds on Cooper Mace to win the Remington Trophy. The guy is, I'll say it. Is there a center you'd rather have in college football?
No, I think he's a center, especially for this particular offense, that I would want more than any.
Yeah. Now, my question is, do you think the perception of Josh Heupel's offense, if they're throwing it all over the field, would hurt Cooper Mays, given the fact that the Remington goes to the best center and people won't see if they run the ball well or not because of that?
I think it should work the opposite way.
I think it should.
I think he's got more on him. So anybody that votes for that award should know that he has more on him from a line call standpoint, especially when the quarterback's out of the shotgun a lot. That's just by nature of having that vantage point. So I would hope that would help him, the fact that they run a high-pace offense. I mean, to me, that's a major check. The high-pace offense, that he has more on him, that should help him. Now, you have a guy that everybody's excited about, but I don't know that he's ready to win postseason awards. Nico
Iamaleava.
Okay, it's worth mentioning that you have him second to another guy, but you have Nico. Do you? People know that you're very high on Nico, but let me ask you this: what are the least in your mind, because you're very high on Nico, the least that he could do award-wise, as opposed to the best, which I know that's winning the Heisman Trophy. But what's the bottom end of that scale? Is it second team all SEC? In your mind?
Yes, that is the bottom of the scale, is second team all SEC.
We're agreeing way too much this early, but that's okay.
No, yeah, and I'm debating with myself on that because Hendon Hooker was first team all SEC. You guys can tell me how Hendon Hooker was first team, but Stetson Bennett got invited to New York over Hendon Hooker that year. I'm still waiting for some explanations for that, but Hooker was first team, and I'm like, if Hooker was first team, how would Nico not be first team? But then I thought in my head, there's the off chance of somebody else balling out because of the fact that, and this is a big deal, the SEC's loaded at quarterbacks this year. I mean, guys loaded at quarterback. And, some voters could see Nico as part of the Heupel system and not great on his own. And they might give it to Carson Beck or, I don't know, Garrett Nussmeier, Jackson Arnold. There's 1,000 different other quarterbacks in the SEC right now. And they won't have playing in Heupel's system held against them the way Nico will.
Okay, the guy that does have the preseason hype and a lot of it, and he's got even more that we're going to get to, is brought to you by Asia Cafe. Asia Cafe has the 6-to-1 Brazilian cocoa energy boosted pre-mix instant white coffee, the golden label coffee bag. It is fantastic with the Lim Dynasty pictured right there on the side. It is unbelievable. Lim Dynasty Asia Cafe is right there on Callahan. Great food. They've got the coffee you can purchase in the bags, but they also have just incredible food. Treat yourself to authentic Asian cuisine, handcrafted from guarded family recipes. 5 locations to choose from: asiacafe.org, asiacafe.org, or right down below. James Pierce has all the preseason pub he needs.
Yeah, James Pierce is in line to win everything. And guys, it's not just his talent. We're going to get to why some people think he's the most talented player in college football this year. But he's the most talented player in college football this year, playing at a position designed to thrive in this for the team he's playing for. So it's one thing if you're the most talented edge rusher in the country and you're playing for Georgia or Alabama or somebody like that. It's another if you're playing for Tennessee, where literally the whole scheme is designed to unleash edge rushers to allow them to get a lot of sacks. Hence why Byron Young became an NFL draft pick, why Tyler Barron, whatever you think of him, was able to command a ton of money on the open market this year in the transfer portal. James Pierce is literally destined to absolutely thrive. It is, Dave, it's like being the best right guard in the country and going to play for Tennessee in 1998.
Because of the offensive line tie-in with Philip Fulmer.
Yes. Full. Look at the guys Fulmer turned into draft picks from that time. Interior linemen. You just brought up Scott Wells. We can also mention, obviously, Kosi Coleman was great on his own, but Fred Weary turned him into an NFL player for about a good 5-6 years. Trey Teague played on the interior, was turned into an NFL player. There were interior linemen after interior linemen playing for a former guard as head coach, who also made one of the best hires ever in Mike Berry to coach the offensive line during that time, that were turned into NFL draft picks and made to look even better. Kosi Coleman to go play for Philip Fulmer is what I'm talking about here, right?
Yes.
Kosi Coleman is a rare talent on his own, and he's going to play for Philip Fulmer.
Absolutely. Who is Tennessee's best ball, not named Nico or James? So far, Cooper Mays is running away with that with 53% of the vote. Brew McCoy, 28% of the vote. And then there's, do we have enough? We've got other as well. We've got to get Dylan Sampson in there, right?
Well, yeah, I knew you were. I wanted to address this because I've been asked about Dylan Sampson, and because he is on the Doak Walker watch list this year. Mm-hmm. I have to say this, and I got to tell people this up front. He ain't winning no Doak Walker. And the reason he won't is he's not going to get enough touches.
No, I agree with that. And the other thing that the Doak Walker shouldn't be, but it is slanted against, is all-purpose backs that catch passes out of back. The Doak Walker Award, doesn't it make you feel like the big 235-pound tailback who carries it between the tackles? That's Doak Walker, right?
Yes. Exactly.
So he doesn't fit the mold. He could have a bigger impact for Tennessee than another running back. But if that running back's a between the tackle guy and he gains 1,800 yards, he's going to win it, right?
Oh, totally. Exactly. Like Luke Staley, how he won it over Travis Stevens in 2001.
That's a great example.
Oh, yeah. Now,
are you telling me any coach in the country wouldn't have rather had Travis? Well, I don't want to go that far, but that is a great example.
Yeah, Travis Stevens was a better player. Neither one of them were great NFL prospects, but Stevens was better than Luke Staley.
Hey,
now,
you've got me sidetracked for a second.
Okay.
Travis Stevens had size issues. You've told me Dylan Sampson can't be a featured back. He had size issues. They found ways to make it work.
Travis Stevens ran behind one of the best offensive lines in history, and at a time when Tennessee was still using a blocking fullback. Do you remember how many holes Will Bartholomew created during that time?
Yes, but
And
I want to say this. Injuries aside, this could be a really, really, really good offensive line. I'm not going to say as good as that group.
but they don't use the extra fullback. Also, you're forgetting this. Everybody forgets this. They had 2 primary blocking tight ends in Jason Witten. And actually, Jason Witten wasn't even their starter that year. John Finlayson was, and he was just a glorified left tackle playing tight end.
It's a glorified maybe a glorified left guard. The show reference.
Well, one thing I got one other
Yes.
almost when I got to mention real quick
Yes.
is that people are also going to ask me about Jackson Ross, because I actually think Jackson Ross has the talent to win the Ray Guy Award, but I don't think Tennessee's going to punt enough this year for him to be on it.
There's a freshman award, right?
There's a freshman award.
It's freshman All-American award. Boo Carter will be on the freshman All-American team.
That's fair. Maybe he'll be on the freshman All-American team. I can give you that. But these are actually like
I thought you were going to say, what a great statement, Dave.
Well, no, because if we're doing All-Americans, I could put a lot of people on this list. I was saying actually awards, like you were the best player at your position and you take home one of them trophies at the end of the year for that. And But no, I'm with you with Boo Carter as freshman All-American. But yeah, for those who ask about Jackson Ross, Josh Heupel doesn't like to punt as is, and he's not going to get a lot of chances to flip the field.
Yep. Show represented by Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, play to win. Banks and Jones. ESPN has their top 100 players. They didn't pay the Vols a lot of respect. Hang tight. Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks and Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks and Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks and Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. I got to get to it right now because I'm just blown away by the fact that Tennessee doesn't have more representation on ESPN's top 100 list. So let's do it right now. What the H?
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
What the H brought to you by our friends Medicare Misty. Medicare Misty she is licensed in over 40 states for Medicare advice. No charge to you. She's awesome. So let's take a look at the ESPN top 100 college football players. So, heard some NFL people say that Georgia may have a number 1 overall draft pick, that LSU may have a number 1 overall draft pick, that James Pierce may be a number 1 overall draft pick from Tennessee. So who is atop the list of ESPN's top 100?
It is safe to say that Tennessee pierced the top of the list.
That's hot.
It is. They say entering his 3rd season, he is number 1 on the ESPN 100 2023 stats.
And James Pierce, to be clear, is who we're talking about.
James Pierce, Jr., the 3rd, Esquire. Entering his 3rd season at Tennessee, the 6'5", 243-pound Pierce is the top pass rusher in the country, despite having started only 3 career games. He's projected as the top 10 pick in the 2025 NFL Draft and has 16.5 tackles for a loss and 12 sacks in his first 2 seasons. Pierce was a first-team All-SEC selection last season by both the AP and coaches after ranking 5th nationally with 38 total pressures. I'm not surprised that James Pierce is number 1, to be real honest with you. And quite frankly, I think that he has elite ability that hasn't been seen at Tennessee in a number of years. And if he goes number 1 overall, that's proof. But even if he goes in the top half, then that's proof that he has talent better than Darnell Wright. Then you have to go how far back to find somebody who was picked in the top half of the NFL draft, Caleb?
No, that's true. Let's begin this.
Who was the last player picked in the top half of the NFL draft? Tennessee player.
I would say probably you go back to 20. You mean the top half of the first round of the NFL draft?
Yes. I'm sorry. Top half of the first round of the NFL draft, so top 16 picks or so.
I think Derek Barnett was on the fringe of that.
I think he was 14.
2017. I think he was 14. So he was that was 2017, top half of the first round.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was probably. I think it might be Derek Barnett who would be on that list, but it was. You're right. It was hard to find some.
Can I go through quickly, if you don't mind? The other three in the top 5. Okay. You have at number 2, Mason Graham, a sophomore. He's a defensive tackle at Michigan. No question. He's very, very good, but a sophomore. You have Travis Hunter, who plays for a Colorado team at cornerback, plays some wide receiver. Sure, he might be exciting. They might be 4-8. Will Johnson, cornerback at Michigan. I don't believe in Michigan with all that they have going on and off the field, and I don't believe in a guy with as little experience as Sharon Moore, their head coach. Then you have Luther Burden III at Missouri, junior wide receiver. Very talented, dynamic receiver. But he's 5'11", so he's not exactly the type of guy that you would draw up for the next Randy Moss. I say that and want to mention these other guys because it would be stunning to me based off that if James Pierce wasn't considered, if he does what we believe he will do, he has a great opportunity to still be considered the top player at the end of the year, and that's when it matters most.
Yes, you're right. And also Mason Graham, the guy who was number 2. We know what Travis Hunter's going to do, but you are right. Mason Graham plays that nose tackle role, and Will Johnson plays the cornerback. Let's call it what it is. Nose tackle and cornerback, outside of offensive line, are the 2 most thankless jobs in football, right? Yes. You do so much legwork, and you still, if you're the best cornerback in football, no one's throwing your way, and you're never going to get noticed. And if you're a really good nose tackle, you'll command a lot of attention and not rack up any stats. The nose tackle, a guy like Mason Graham, is there to turn guys like James Pierce into a star. And James Pierce has the best chance to be a star. Dave, with what we're talking about, if defensive players are all this high, should we start considering James Pierce for Heisman? Does James Pierce have a chance to go to New York?
No, because it has nothing to do with him, but the Heisman voters don't do their research like they should. And I'm one of them. I do my research. I do. I'm like 2 hours at the end of every year. I'm like, just leave me alone. And I tell my wife the same thing after the season's over. I take it very seriously, but most people don't. I would say as many as 60% don't. Therefore, they're not going to take a defensive player, especially if, let's say, for instance, Pierce just has 8 sacks, but 18 tackles for a loss. Okay, which would be phenomenal. They're not going to look at the tackles for a loss. So he would have to get crazy number of sacks to be considered, which is unfair to ask of a defensive end who also has to play the run.
Yes, no, I totally agree. That's a very, very good point. Also, I love the comparison someone brought up comparing James Pierce to Javon Curse. The only difference I would say is I feel like Javon Curse had 1 move off the line of scrimmage, for those who don't remember. He was not very versatile, and once people figured out that move, he actually collapsed a little bit until Kevin Carter came. Now, what about okay, so there's James Pierce at 1. Let's shoot down. There's Nico Iamaleava at 92.
Okay, I want to get to that, but can I address a couple things first, real quick?
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, no, that's fine.
Meade says, what time is the scrimmage today? So if you're watching live, we will have some scrimmage notes at the end of the show today. So it's going on right now to answer your question. Okay. Now, you need to be mindful of the next few guys on this list real quick because you have Will Campbell at number 6. Why is that significant to Tennessee? Because Will Campbell and Emory Jones opened the door for Lance Hurd to say, I'm getting out of here. And then the top quarterback is Carson Beck. So we don't say this a lot, but what would it mean just in a very subjective sort of way to see James Pierce have a great game and, I don't know, sack Carson Beck number 2? or twice. Could that affect his standing in the NFL draft? I mean, we say that, like, for instance, Darnell Wright did a great job against Will Anderson, so it helped Darnell Wright's stock. This is a little bit different, but it does add a little bit of sauce to the mix in that rivalry.
If that happens, it would be huge for James Pierce's stock, because this is true for awards.
I will say this. I will go back on something I said. If he sacks Carson Beck twice and Tennessee wins that game against Georgia, yes, he will go to New York as part of the Heisman ceremony.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's not as true for the NFL anymore. I do think this. I think scouts and NFL work is done so heavily. I think a lot of times, Dave, they have their number one pick before the season even starts, and they're not going to get fooled by like individual performances week to week. Is that fair to say with the way NFL drafts work now? Award voters get fooled all the time, and they get fooled on when things happen. So if James Pierce does this, Dave, it's not just going to be that he did it. It's going to be that he did it in November, in the third to last week of the season, in front of the lights, in front of everybody. That, like, what if Tennessee and Georgia are playing to go to the SEC title now? That's irrelevant now because of the college football playoff, but it's still a thing. So what if they're playing to go to the SEC title, and Tennessee beats Georgia and finishes like 12-0 or 11-1, and James Pierce racks up like 3 sacks in that game, and it's the second to last week of the year? He's not only going to New York, that's a serious chance for a Heisman, right?
Yes.
Like,
those are big ifs. Those are big ifs. A defensive player is probably never going to win the Heisman again because Charles Woodson embarrassed a lot of college football with the way he acted at the Walter Camp Award and other places.
If a defensive player does win the Heisman, it would be from Tennessee, because people.
Oh, is it sort of payback? Yeah, I got that.
Yeah, and remember Charles Woodson. Why did he win the Heisman? His last regular season game before everybody turned in their ballots. What did he do? Punt return touchdown, interception, help Michigan beat Ohio State to finish number 1 in the year. Like, it was like the perfect time. And
if it's a defensive player too, I believe that it should be an edge rusher over a cornerback. If they were completely equal in my mind, I would go edge rusher. I think they affect the game more. Now, who are some young players who will be in this discussion next year? Brought to you by Medicare Misty. I'll remind you, regulated and licensed in over 40 states, and absolutely free advice from Medicare Misty. Who's going to be in this list next year when we discuss top honorees and top attention getters coming up in 30 seconds?
19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com, or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
One player that doesn't have to wait to be an upperclassman is redshirt freshman Nico Iamaleava. He comes in where, Caleb Calhoun?
All the way down at number 92, guys. And I'm counting now, and there are like a good 10 to 15 quarterbacks. I'm thinking of roughly 10 to 15 quarterbacks on this list over Nico. Now,
do you think that's disrespectful?
Yes, it's absolutely disrespectful.
He's a redshirt freshman that's played 1 game, Caleb.
Okay, they have James Pierce number 1, and he only started 3 games last year.
Yeah, but he played a lot.
I'm just saying, I'm sorry. This is some lazy scouting. Nico Iamaleava should already be in your top 5. He should already be in your top 5. I'm not saying you have to have him number 1. You don't have to project him the way I'm projecting him. But he should already be in your top 5. He shouldn't be down at number 92. I'm just going down the list of quarterbacks that have no business being ahead of him. Okay, he's 1 spot ahead of Avery Johnson. But, okay, what about this? A guy who didn't play much last year either, who didn't start. Miller Moss, the USC quarterback. What is Miller Moss doing ahead of Nico Iamaleava? He's going to go take over for Caleb Williams. How does he belong over Nico?
I think Nico being on the list is a sign of respect in and of itself. When I talk top 100 players in college football, can you find me a redshirt freshman quarterback, which is the most important position on the field, or a freshman quarterback? There's not going to be a true one, but that rates above him. To me, this is a big time sign of respect for the Vols.
Okay, we got to stop with the age, though. It's not the age. It's not the year. It's the starting experience you have. Miller Moss may be a junior to Nico being a redshirt freshman. One, that's really a 1-year difference. And they have the same starting experience.
Hold on. You're the one that told me that Nico was too small to play last year. That's not experience. That's being in the college program and putting on weight. That counts for something.
But what I'm saying is, Nico has been in the program for a year at the college level. Miller Moss has been at the college level for 2 years. They have the same amount of starting experience. Okay? So what I'm trying to say is that I don't understand how he could be ahead of Nico Iamaleava. Now, you got me with like Preston Stone at SMU, Riley Leonard at Notre Dame, Connor Wegeman maybe at Texas A&M. These guys all started significantly more. I'm saying you got to do a little bit of projection here with some players, all right? You can't have these guys all ahead of Nico just because they played last year and Nico didn't. I mean, Kaidon Salter, okay, Brady Cook, okay, even though I think Nico will be better than Brady Cook this year. Cam Rising, okay. I mean, a lot of these I can get with. But I think you can't just go – this is why I hate the NFL films where they do the top 100 players every year that the players vote on. You ever notice the players just vote on who the best player was the most recent year?
Yes. But yes. I don't have a problem with that, the recency bias. I'm not going to have a problem with the recency bias this year if Nico Iamaleava gets invited to New York. That would be recency bias. You're not basing it off Carson Beck winning a championship.
I'm saying these rankings take way too much of the previous season into account and don't take fluidity into account. And I'm saying because of that, Nico is getting overlooked. You don't have to put him top 5, even among quarterbacks. You don't have to take the leap of faith I'm taking. You got to take more of a leap of faith than number 92. And don't even get me started on the fact that nobody else from Tennessee is on this list.
Okay. I do want to get you started on that. But first, I'm going to ask you this question. Nico will finish the season as the blank best quarterback in the SEC per QB rating. Now, that's important. Why? Because Josh Heupel's offense and QB rating are meant to go together because they throw a lot of long balls. So I've got he'll finish in QB rating number 1, number 2 after Carson Beck, or top 5 or outside the top 5. He's still a freshman. So I'm going to ask you that question on the poll on our YouTube page. So go ahead and vote now, and we would greatly appreciate it. And your thoughts on the message board. So I think I know where Caleb's going to go. Are you willing to give him the nod over Carson Beck, or do you want to tease that forward?
Oh, I'll give him the nod over Carson Beck. And I'll tell you this, if he's not over Carson Beck, then I have Josh Heupel on the hot seat.
Wow. Yeah, I really like Carson Beck. So we're going to differ on that pretty majorly. And maybe hot seat is a little strong. Portions of the program are, yes, go ahead.
Real quick. I'll let you do your read. I got a couple of names who should be on this list.
Give them to me. Let me do this. Let me tell our fine friends that portions of the program are brought to you by our great friend Rick Terry Jewelry Design. They want to be your jeweler looking for affordable game day jewelry. How about the Fire Opals? They are fantastic. Rick Terry Jewelry Design. He wants to be your jeweler. A Tennessee tradition, truly, right there on Kingston Pike. And also, thanks to our good friend Rick Terry Jewelry Design, we're able to offer up Rick Terry's Great 8 Garmin Challenge. Get ready for Rick Terry's Great 8 Garmin Challenge, brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Design. All you have to do is subscribe to the station and be a member of Hooker's Corner. Now, you can be a free member, and I'm going to put that QR code up there right now. You can be a free member And we may have a newsletter coming down the pipe pretty quickly, but if you're a free member and subscribe to the channel, you can win a $1,000 Garmin watch to be given away to a lucky listener once we hit 8,000 subscribers, and that's right around the corner. You are welcome to join. Again, join Hooker's Corner for free, or and I should say, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Now, if you want to be eligible for this awesome Joe Milton mini helmet right behind me that is fantastic, be a paid member, just $9.98, increased recruiting coverage and interaction with me and Caleb Calhoun. We'll have a bi-weekly chat coming up that I just signed Caleb Calhoun up for. Have you been busy, Caleb? You got time for that? It's not like you got a baby and a full-time job here or anything.
Hookers always love to chat afterward.
That's right. Hang tight with me for 2 minutes.
Wait. We got to talk about players that should have been on this list.
Players that should have been on the list.
Where's Cooper Mays? ESPN has him as a preseason All-American.
Oh, gosh.
You suck, you jackass.
Not having
How is Cooper Mays not on this list?
That's stupid.
And I just wanted to answer your question because you asked about some young players who could be on this list next year. Real quick, which
and I would even tell you that I think that if this was a list of top 100 prospects, that Cooper should be on it, because that would be roughly 3 rounds, and he's the top center in the nation, in my opinion. So he's going to go about 4th round based off what I've been told from scouts. So he's borderline if it's draft picks, but this is just players. He should be like top 30.
Absolutely. He should be top 30 among players. It's ridiculous that he's not.
I'm glad you caught me, because that's a damn shame.
It is a shame.
Now,
you asked for young players who will be on there next year. I would be thoroughly shocked if Boo Carter's not on this list going into next year, and maybe Arian Carter.
I like both of those. Anybody else you want to add on there?
Going into next year?
I thought you might have a defensive edge rusher.
Edge rush? Oh, Jordan Ross? No, he won't play enough because James Pierce is going to get all the stardom. Now, again, I'm high on players for this year. Like, for instance, Cooper Mays should be on the list. Amari Thomas, I have high regard for. You guys know how I feel about him. He's not a top 100 player in college football, though. I hold him in very high esteem.
See, I would have argued Omari because the way he's able to clog a post. Listen, we're out of time on this topic. We've got to get to, if not Brew, who? Because I think Tennessee's receivers have proven through the people I've spoken to this point in preseason camp that they're more than just a one horse pony show.
One trick pony. One trick
pony. They're more than Brew, but Brew's great. 2 minutes, I'll tell you some more news from Tennessee football practice, and we will have a wrap up of what the Vols do as we're live right now. Hit that like and subscribe button. It helps us bring more people into the channel. A lot of big announcements coming up. 2 minutes off the Hook Sports.
Super Cab 4x4 STX, $45,985. 24 Ford Escape, $30,962. 24 Ford Maverick XLT, $32,720. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Have you seen the latest TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co.? What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Ah, gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TriStarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TriStarHatsCo.com. That's TriStarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TriStarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOKED. That's hooked when I do, to save an additional 10% off. TriStarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Any use without express written consent is prohibited.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of Off the Hook Sports, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
If you don't mind, go ahead and vote on that poll question on our YouTube page because I want to know where you stand. I can't say that I'm shocked, but I'm a little surprised. I think Tennessee fans are maybe a little bit more guarded in their optimism. By the way, the show represented by Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Play to win. Other attorneys say they'll go to trial. They won't. Banks and Jones. So the question, Nico will finish the season as the blank best quarterback in the SEC by quarterback rating. Number one, 27%. Number two, after Carson Beck, that's where I would fall. Top five, 41%. And then outside the top five, too young. I'm ruling that completely out because we're going by quarterback rating. Now, if we went by perception, people could still hold it against him that he's young. But if he's outside the top five, I'll go with Caleb that somebody's going to be on the hot seat. Something went wrong or he got hurt and you have to chuck the 2024 season. I mean, obviously, injuries can chuck any season. But if Nico's outside the top five and completely healthy, I think you've got real issues there. Caleb, this day in Tennessee sports history, 16 days till football time in Tennessee. Are you going to play up Peyton Manning at all in this?
No, I'm going to have a little fun real quick. Okay, I'm sorry, but
you're not going to mention Peyton Manning on the 16-day. Peyton, what do you think of that?
Like, that is total bullshit.
Yeah, see? That's what Peyton thinks of you.
Give me time. There could be a Peyton reference later in the show. Okay, all right. But today we have to have a little bit of fun with one of the most legendary moments in Tennessee football history. And yes, I'm taking another shot at the great Butch Jones because on this day, 11 years ago, I'm just going to share it with you guys real quick. Butch Jones decided to host a fashion show to unveil Tennessee's new uniforms. And here he is right here, he's bringing the players in and he's, look at him. This is
bizarre. I have to be honest with you. I think this is my time at ESPN. I have not seen this before. Will you please play this?
You want me to play this?
Well, or just describe it before I get too sad.
And actually,
look at his hand. Look at how creepy his hand was right there. You see that?
Gray jerseys.
Basically, Butch Jones was bringing out players and having them wear the different jerseys, and he was pointing out to the numbers and the design and things and making it like a fashion show, like walking, like, what is it in New York where you like walk the runway and having athletes come and walk the runway. And
how stupid do you think the players felt?
They felt it. I don't know. I have no idea. It was so cringy to watch.
So I'm going to ask you this question. Brew McCoy, I've done a little bit of digging, and I've talked to some people around the game of football, including NFL scouts and some coaches. And I think that you're going to see defenses allow Brew McCoy to get open early because I think they're going to test and see how that leg is doing. Now, I think the leg is going to be fine. And then I think by the time the games get significant, and really you probably see enough for that Chattanooga tape, you're going to start to see Brew McCoy dictate coverage, which is the definition of a number one receiver. It's not just the guy who catches the most passes. So I'm telling you, I'm predicting that he'll be back to form and a number one receiver that will dictate coverage. That's what got Jalen Hyatt so open, as Caleb pointed out early in the show. So if they rotate everybody over, if Brew McCoy is going against 2 or 3 and other guys are going against 1, other than Brew, who will be the Vols' most productive receiver. Now, I think Chris Brazzell, and I'm going to tell you why, but I thought at our 3:45 a.m. production meeting that Caleb would just naturally agree with me, which he never does. So I don't know why the hell I thought that, but he said, no, I don't think that's it. Who do you think it might be if it's not Chris Brazzell?
So if it's not going to be Chris Brazzell, and I'm not so sure it will be, I'm going to go with a young man by the name of Squirrel White.
Can't argue with Squirrel White.
We're going to see total White domination at receiver this year, guys.
He's going to do it the white way, I guess. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to put on this. I want to put on our YouTube poll right now. Other than Brew, who will be the Vols' most productive receiver? Chris Brazzell and Squirrel White have to be there. I think Chaz Nimrod is going to be guy number one off the bench, but he really can't compete. So help me round out the top four. And I've said receiver, so we technically could include Dylan Sampson, but he's going to have a lot of catches. I don't think he'll have the yards as Brazzell or Brew or White. So that's kind of cheating the question a little bit. So Brazzell, White, would you have Nimrod on there?
Okay, so no, because I know Chaz Nimrod's been making waves, but I just believe too much in Mike Matthews for Nimrod to be able to work his way into the starting lineup. I know that's crazy, but I think Mike Matthews is like borderline Randy Moss with this team.
Okay, that's the opposite of what we're hearing. So Caleb is predicting forward. So do you want me to put Mike Matthews or put other?
You know what? Okay, so we're talking Squirrel. Who are the ones you named again? Let's go through it again.
Brazzell, White, Nimrod.
Brazzell, White, and Nimrod. Let's do other. Let's do other instead of Nimrod and give them a chance to add.
I don't think it's going to be Matthews, but I think Matthews is going to have a special year in 2025. And I think he'll turn in some plays that you'd be kind of like, whoa, what's pretty insane. Tennessee's wide receiver group. Now, here's why I think it'll be Brazzell in exactly 15 seconds, brought to you by our friends at Ray Varner Ford.
Limited 4x4, $67,950. 2017 Ford F-150 Raptor SVT, $41,950. 2023 Ford Escape ST line, $28,940. Ray Varner Ford, built for the game.
Okay, couple things. Seen some practice tape, seen a decent amount of practice in which Brazzell has won one-on-one battles. This is a big guy. This is a big physical receiver, Caleb, and if you can pull up his size specifically, this is what a couple of players had to say about. Let me pull up the. Yes, there's the Chris Brazzell story. Sorry, it's on offthehooksports.com. Wrote it this morning. 6'5", 200 pounds. He is winning one-on-one battles, and I think that. You try to find a place to put him as the media, as could he be a slot guy, but he's a natural outside receiver. And I think with Squirrel White as a little jitterbug in the middle, that you can have an incredible top three. And I'm not just saying good, an incredible top three with Chris Brazzell, the second in there. He said about him and Nico, he said, quote, me and Nico have a good relationship. It's more of the plays on my end, being able to know my assignment, play fast versus thinking before the play and not being as decisive during the play. And his physicality is absolutely through the roof. He says it comes from within you. If you want to block, then you can block. If you don't want to block, then you probably are going to not be able to block. It's a mindset thing, which you just said yesterday, referring to Tennessee's running backs. I like everything this guy said. I like his demeanor. I like what I hear about him in private conversations. I'm not ruling out that Chris Brazzell, when it's all said and done, could be as good as Brew McCoy.
He seems like he has the build of Brew McCoy. First, one big question that gets on my nerves. Why is he Chris Brazzell the second and not Chris Brazzell Jr.? I'm sorry.
I'm the second, so you can't go there.
Why are you guys? It's Junior. It's a Junior.
I didn't want to be Junior. My dad didn't want to be Junior. Nobody wanted to be. So I'm the second.
Okay, very pretentious. Oh, I'm the second. Yes. Okay, whatever. That's my only pet peeve with you and Chris Brazzell. Okay, and I'm named after a terrible human being, John C. Calhoun, so I can say that. But okay, so not named after him, just happened to share his name. Anyways, Chris Brazzell, I always felt was that physical type of receiver that would have great hands. Now, my question was always the speed, but you're saying the speed is there. That's what they're saying?
I think it's there. I've seen enough in practice film that I think he can. I don't think
he sounds like a clone of Brew McCoy.
I think they're very similar.
Wow. Which is different from a Mike Matthews, who I believe in, because Mike Matthews is more of an athletic receiver, right? Like a fluid guy that would just torch you down the sidelines. But also, you know what I mean? Mike Matthews is, again, I drew Randy Moss comparisons to Mike Matthews, but that's different than, okay, on the highest levels, there is a Randy Moss, and then there's an Andre Johnson, right? And Andre Johnson is a much more physical receiver,
talent-wise, because I know I'm older than you. So you're probably going to sell Jerry Rice short a little bit, but I think that
Jerry Rice, I would say.
Well, I think they're more talented, but I think these two guys are well-rounded. I'm not comparing them to Jerry Rice, but I don't think they're necessarily uber. Randy Moss is a guy that can go over the top and make crazy plays. I don't know that they're that, but if you want to compare them to a Jerry Rice as a well-rounded receiver, I can do that.
See, I was going to go like more modern because of the size. Somebody
or
like
Irvin.
Andre
Michael Irvin.
See, I thought Michael Irvin was kind of Randy Moss before Randy Moss, though, wasn't he? Wasn't he the athletically gifted, go over the top, make plays guy?
Boy, not to that level.
Not to the Moss degree, but
I would love to stand up for my guy Mike, but not to that.
I'm
level.
thinking more on the level of maybe of not just Andre Johnson, but a Larry Fitzgerald, too. Larry Fitzgerald was a very physically gifted receiver, physically imposing, who was well-rounded. You're right. I'm saying Mike Matthews is closer to the Randy Moss style. Not that he's Randy Moss, but closer to the Randy Moss style, whereas Brazzell and Brew are both of, you're right, the Andre Johnson. I'm not going Jerry Rice because I don't think Jerry Rice ever dictated coverage in his life. There, I said it. I don't think people change their defensive schemes because of Jerry Rice in the passing game. I think it would have been the same if any other receiver was in that passing game for the 49ers.
Completely disagree. In Tennessee Junior, there's nothing wrong with being a junior. We love you. There's nothing wrong with being a junior. That's right, Caleb. What's wrong?
Well, the only other thing I wanted to ask is, but what you're saying is, if he's a clone of Brew McCoy, do you really start those two together? Because don't you want a change of pace with your other wideout?
No, I think you start them. I think they tried to get fancy last year, and you brought this up a couple of days ago, and I mulled it around and asked around, and I think they got a little fancy with putting Dante Thornton at slot. I mean, I thought so too. Look at Dante Thornton's body. Well, we projected him there, so don't we deserve some of the blame?
Yeah, I said Dante Thornton going to this offense was like Kevin Durant going to the Warriors when they already had the best offense in the NBA.
Yeah, but we also projected him at the slot. Did we make a huge mistake? Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards to ensure you only receive the best in CBD or Delta products. It's Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOK for 10% off. HOOK for 10% off. I mean, Dante Thornton is a 6'4" guy. Squirrel White is a sub 6 foot guy. Just Football 101 tells me that Thornton's the outside receiver and White's the inside. I'm really having trouble looking back at it and seeing how the media got so sideways on that.
Do we think the issue is that, and this is just a question, do you think Dante Thornton's just not a great route runner? Like, he's just straight line speed?
Well, if so, then he would be an outside receiver as well.
Yeah, he would. He would. You got to run routes well in the slot, particularly in this system. Now you still have to make a certain read. I mean, this is where Jalen Hyatt was superb, because the bear coverage is actually easier on the outside than it is for the slot guy. The slot guy actually has to make the right read, and if they do, they are so wide open, right? And if they don't, they're nowhere to. You can't get them the ball. And Jalen Hyatt was superb at that. I think that we'll see. I think Squirrel White can do it. But it's funny that we didn't mention Dante Thornton as one of the guys who could lead this team in receiving.
That is weird. I think he's a complimentary receiver. You want to hear something crazy? I thought Randy Moss was just a long strike, just go deep and get open, kind of like Alvin Harper, who played at Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
And then after about 2 years in the NFL, I was like, he can do everything. So,
yeah,
I mean, but Dante Thornton feels like that guy who could probably run a streak and get open most of the time or make the grab like he did when he got hurt. But I would be surprised if he's one of Tennessee's top 3 productive receivers. So other than Brew, who will be the Vols' most productive receiver, we will have the updated poll results for you, brought to you by Quality Tire Pros. The Eberle family has been serving Chattanooga's community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service automotive, brakes, alignments, oil changes, and more, all work covered by nationwide warranty. Cherokee Blvd or online at qualitytirepros.com, qualitytirepros.com. Tell Bo that Off the Hook Sports said, hey, Bo. That's Cherokee, qualitytirepros.com. Brazzell leads with 64% of the vote, White 36% of the vote, other than Brew, who will be the Vols' most productive receiver. Nimrod, not with a vote, and I can understand that, but no other. So is this just a 2-horse race? I tend to agree with the voters. I think it's a 2-horse race, barring injury.
Yeah, I think it's a 2-horse race. I think it's Squirrel White or Chris Brazzell. I think it's a 1-horse race, though. If Brew McCoy's not leading the team in receiving, guys, it's going to be Squirrel White. It's going to be Squirrel White. Squirrel White led the team in receiving last year, and Jalen Hyatt led him in receiving the year before. So it's been the slot guy 2 years in a row. It's either the number 1 wideout or the slot guy in this system. So if it's not Brew, either he's not the number 1 wideout, or Squirrel White's leading the team in receiving.
We had a question about Nathan Leacock. I think he continues to work. I think that he needs to make a major step this year, or the train's going to leave the station without him. Is that fair?
That's totally fair.
Now, Leacock is doing his work, because we wrote he got 12 to 13,000 footballs in the offseason, has completely changed his body. That tells me 2 things. 1, that he's got the right attitude, but 2, that he had to do a lot of that work. So he may not be a guy who has an impact, because it sounds like he didn't get the work done in year 1. So he's doing it now. But he was a true freshman last year for Tennessee. He only played in 1 game. He's a redshirt freshman now. I would expect good things out of him. I don't know that I would expect great things out of him, and I don't know that I would expect them anytime soon. All right. This day in Tennessee sports history.
We already did that.
Oh, the stat of the day. Sorry, stat of the day. Are we ready for the stat of the day? Coop, what should people do?
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
Thank you. And if you do so, you got a chance to win a fantastic watch, a Garmin watch worth over $1,000. Thanks to our friend Rick Terry. Just be subscribed right here, and we'll tell you more how to do that. All right. So what do you got in terms of the stat of the day?
So I would like to send a shout out to the most successful number 16 ever at Tennessee.
That's Peyton Manning, right?
I'm going to go. Yes, it's Peyton Manning. I'm trolling you guys, but I am going
to. I thought you were messing with us.
It is Peyton Manning, but I'm actually not going to name him today. The other number 16 that everybody forgets, Rashad Baker. Just to throw a curveball at you. I just wanted to mess with you guys. Rashad Baker also wore number 16.
They're like, that is cool bullshit.
Wait, Rashad Baker, his last year in 2003 at Tennessee is proof that when you're really, really good at your job at cornerback, you don't rack up any stats, because Rashad Baker was a preseason All-American. People thought highly touted NFL draft pick, had 1 interception the whole year, and it was the last game of the year at Kentucky. And the reason he only had 1 interception was nobody was throwing his way that year. Rashad Baker shut down half the field in 2003 with Tennessee.
Rashad Baker is a very good player. I want to hear a funny story about Rashad Baker, who played a lot of safety too. Rashad Baker, Philip Fulmer came out after a practice was one of the first 2 or 3 contact practices of his freshman year and said, "This is the smoothest receiver that I have ever seen in all my years of coaching." And the next day came out and the postseason press conference, "We have decided to move Rashad Baker to defense." What? I mean, if you want to, if you ever could just know things about Tennessee football that you're probably never going to know, it would be the fights between John Chavis and David Cutcliffe about players.
But you're right. But
that would be epic to be a fly on the wall. John Chavis will still tell you that Jason Witten would have been a Hall of Fame defensive end. That argument's not over, Caleb.
Oh, I know that. And funny enough, had Jason Witten stayed at defensive end, he would have played next to John Henderson and Albert Haynesworth on that team. So
yeah, I know. But there were, and then other players they battled over Rashad Baker. They battled over. Yes, go ahead.
The reason Witten was shocking was because Randy Sanders was there, and with John Chavis and Randy Sanders, John Chavis always won those fights. And Rashad Baker, the reason Fulmer said that was because Randy Sanders was offensive coordinator at that point. That's why Rashad Baker switched and Jonathan Wade switched. I thought Jonathan Wade had amazing potential as a receiver for Tennessee, and they moved him. Who else did they move? Who else did they switch?
Well, I mean, Tennessee's entire linebacker crew of the 98 national championship team played a lot of running back. That was kind of their MO. But I don't think there was any doubt that they were going to play coming in. With Baker, there was an ongoing battle. With Witten, there was an ongoing battle during recruitment. It's so funny. You probably tell these guys, "Hey, Rashad, there's no question you're playing receiver. Hey, Jason, there's no question you're playing defensive end." Meanwhile, you're taking another phone call from David Cutcliffe and you're Philip Fulmer. "I don't want him. I can't move him. I can't." And it goes back and forth. And boy, those are some battles that I would love to be a fly on the wall for.
Oh, yeah. That year, by the way, there was a two-sided player, Mark Jones, who was Tennessee's Travis Hunter that year, right? In 2003.
Mark Jones is very good, so I guess they both won a little bit. I tell you what, coming up, this is I think we're going to prove to you why Tennessee is ahead of the NIL game once again. And it actually has to do with a prospect they lost. But I think it's for the better. 2 minutes with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, Off the Hook Sports.
5th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. If you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe Neubert Collision Center.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
23 F-150 Super Cab 4x4 STX, $45,985. 24 Ford Escape, $30,962. 24 Ford Maverick XLT, $32,720. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports,
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Question on the message board. As the show represented by Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Other attorneys say they'll go to trial. They won't. Play to win. BanksandJones.com. Mead Drinker says, wasn't Witten mad that he got moved to tight end? He was madder than a hornet. And one of my favorite interviews is I interviewed him right after he got moved from defensive end to tight end because I waited around because I didn't have deadline because I was working for a radio station at the time. So I could just hang out all night. Sports information people be like, fine, Dave's just going to hang out here and wait for players. I've got to go home and see my family. Not me. So I waited around, got Jason Witten an exclusive. And I've told you this story before, Caleb, but I remember saying, you realize that no tight end has ever caught more than 28 passes as of all. He goes, I know. And I said, you do realize that there's never been a successful tight end at Tennessee. I know. And I was told that he went home, called his family. You know, he's much publicized. He had a father that wasn't there for him. So he called his family, his coach, and was on the verge of transferring and probably would have had the transfer portal existed. Caleb, yeah. I think he might have walked off of Tennessee's campus that very day when I got done speaking to him. I'm not overstating this. He wasn't mad. He was just dismayed and frustrated. That's how I would put it. He wasn't like angry, but just bewildered, flabbergasted would be.
And then he went and played against Alabama in 2001. And he said, oh, this tight end thing might work out for me.
Yeah.
And
it did.
It did. I felt that, I'm just going to be honest. You can call me crazy. I still feel that. Remember the 2002 team that had all those injuries?
Yes.
Am I crazy for thinking that Tennessee did not throw to Witten enough that year?
You're not crazy to think that they didn't, but you're crazy to think that they wouldn't, because that's just not the way the offense was built. And Sanders was running Cutcliffe's offense. That was running the offense that he ran that was focused around receivers and not as much tight end. So we shouldn't have been.
You were saying,
go ahead.
What you were saying is Randy Sanders was not the type of offense coordinator to change and evolve an offense with times.
Exactly. So I think Josh Heupel, if he felt like it, could go 4 wide all the time and eliminate the tight end. I think also if he needed to, if he had 2 Ethan Davises, he could go 2 tight ends. I think he has an overall grasp of offense that's greater than other than David Cutcliffe, Tennessee's coaches that I've ever covered.
I'm just saying Randy Sanders, I want to stick with the offense, and therefore Leonard Scott's just going to be our go-to receiver now that Kelly Washington is hurt, rather than, I don't know, throwing it to this tight end that's going to be one of the greatest tight ends in NFL history.
Yeah. I like how you appreciate that story. I was fortunate enough to be sent to Dallas a couple of times because Jason Witten won the Bob Lilly Award, which is the greatest cowboy off the field. He won it 8 times. Bob Lilly won it 6. So they should rename the thing. And I'll ask you this, Caleb. Would Jason Witten have been in the Hall of Fame if he were a defensive end? Yes or no?
I think he could have. But
no, not could or should or might have.
I don't think he would. I think he's too tall. Unless you're like Julius Peppers, freakishly athletic, I think that height can cost you when you're playing defensive end.
Hey now. Totally agree with you. That was the right move for him, even if he didn't understand it at the time. And thank God for no transfer portal. I mean, that's one of the things that you lose. You would not have. Jason Witten would be a defensive end for Texas A&M playing in the NFL 5 years after his college career.
He can thank Fulmer for lying to him. That, by the way, and I have to let's give Fulmer some credit. That's one of the gutsiest, most bold things ever, right? Philip Fulmer saw this guy and said, I'm going to lie to him and tell him he's a defensive end, but his whole future hinges on him being able to play tight end, because you're right. If he's a defensive end, now that I say it out loud, he gets drafted in the NFL and he's out after 5 years.
Well, and it's an in-state kid, so it could undermine you in recruiting. You're right. I thought at the time it was one of Philip Fulmer's absolutely boldest moves of his career and one of his best moves of his career. So kudos. 4 downs now, and it's brought to you by Neubert Collision Center.
4 downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show. 4 downs. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Okay, there are going to be a lot of people mad at us. This will be on offthehooksports.com. college football teams on the decline. We did college football teams on the incline yesterday, college football teams on the incline. So we'll have to be a little creative here, Caleb.
Well, now the decline, you mean? The decline.
The decline. We'll have to be a little bit creative as we have 4 downs and 5 teams. But first, let me say this. People need to.
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
Thank you. And if you haven't done that yet, then you can't win that Garmin watch. What down, Coop?
Coop here. First down.
Brought to you by Rick Terry. So you had Ohio State number 5, Georgia number 4. Those are 2 powers. So let's address those first. Ohio State and Georgia. Now, I happen to agree with you, but I'm going to all out play devil's advocate. Okay. So this is not, we're not going to do it like a rehearsed debate or anything. This is, I believe in what Caleb's about to say because we've talked about it so many times off the air. But let me play devil's advocate. Take Ohio State.
So Ohio State, you want me to explain it? Ohio State, I'll start with them. Now, and by the way, that's funny. You mentioned Ohio State and Georgia. I told you there's the golden trio of jobs where you could just pluck an average Joe Schmo out of anywhere in the world and have them coach those programs and they'd win a national title. Ohio State, Georgia, and LSU are those 3 programs. Nobody else belongs on that list, right? Those are the 3.
Okay. I can roll with that. Back in the day, you'd have Southern California in there, but Southern California and that area is not a football area.
And it's in Southern California, those kids aren't committed to playing in LA. Like a lot of other schools can come and pluck those kids out of LA that are talented. I mean, there's never been a loyalty to Southern California in the LA area. Is that fair to say?
Agreed. Which it's not a football area. That's what I was alluding to. Anyway, so
yes.
So Ohio State, your argument is?
My argument for Ohio State is that I think that this is a match made in hell. And when you match Chip Kelly with the Ryan Day, it's clear that the Ohio State administration, I don't think they know what they're doing. They're trying to purposely undercut Ryan Day because they're spending all this NIL money while publicly undercutting their head coach, which will destroy you. As you know, Dave, in 1992, when Tennessee thought they had 2 head coaches, they lost 3 straight games because in reality, they had no head coach at that point when Johnny Majors came back. And that's going to create a rift. It's going to collapse the program. They're going to ease Ryan Day out. They're going to put Chip Kelly in. It's going to create more rifts down the line. And I think Chip Kelly has let the game pass him by.
Ohio State fans say,
Why don't you shut the hell up?
All right. Chip Kelly upgrades their coaching staff. Judkins from Ole Miss upgrades their backfield. Ryan Day, before the past year, I've been told was a wonderkin. I've defended Ohio State. Georgia, which actually Georgia will become now 4th down as Cooper will.
What type of official do I have?
It's 4th, but it's first down. First down is number 4.
Coop here. First down.
You've got the University of Georgia. Why?
I think now this decline, I don't think is a long-term thing, and it'll be very quickly fixable. But I think that after 2 national titles, just missing last year, I think 2 things are happening. One, I think they're going to put too much pressure on Carson Beck. And I think you see this with programs. You saw Nick Saban do this with Bryce Young. When elite, talented programs have an elite quarterback, the rest of the talented players, they step back a little bit and put too much on the quarterback. It's what Tennessee did with Peyton Manning. And I think that's going to cost them this year. Then you have all the discipline issues. That's going to resonate with recruits and parents of recruits down the line, which is why I am here to tell you Kirby Smart has won his last national championship with Georgia.
Stole the thunder from me there. I agree. I agree with that. I can't.
And you wouldn't have said that a year ago, would you?
No. I think the fact that the off-field car issues have not stopped shows a lack of respect. It shows a team mindset that if you're a player, that you can get on the field no matter what you do off the field. I think it led to Philip Fulmer's downfall. I think, unless I'm proven wrong, that's what's happening at Georgia. Now, where you and I will differ is I think they've probably got 1 or 2 more runs in them because of talent and the old chip on their shoulder. Hey, last year was that championship, kind of the way they did with Stetson Bennett and Carson Beck. So I think there's a lot of players that want to prove themselves and talented players and want to get ready for the NFL draft. So you and I differ. I think they could win a championship this year. I haven't made my pick yet, but I think you will see them on the decline. So maybe I'm jumping around the issue. That wouldn't be decline from this point forward, but do you see what I'm getting at?
Yep, I see where you're getting at.
Okay. I think we're on the end of the run. So maybe
you think the run is still there, but it's about to, the wheels are about to come off.
And I would not be surprised if they came off this year.
Kind of like when the Cowboys in 95 won the Super Bowl. Like it was still there.
You cannot come up with a better comparison. You absolutely cannot. I felt bad for the Steelers in the Super Bowl because that was such a despicable Cowboys team and what they did off the field. And these guys, they've killed people.
Yeah. I mean, or 2008 Florida. You saw what was coming down the pipe after 2008.
And then Kirby Smart says we're going to leave it up to the collectives to find them.
Well, I actually don't mind that. I mean, punish players with their money.
Yeah, but he should be in charge of it. He should be calling the collectives, and maybe there's an NCAA rule, but he seemed to just
push it though. Maybe that's what he's doing behind the scenes.
Yeah, he probably is. All right.
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
All right. Second down, you've got Alabama at number 3. College football teams on the decline. I'm going to let you make your argument, but I'm the very same way here. I think that they'll have a run, maybe 2 left in them as far as the season, but I think the end of the run is near, and that they'll either have to rebuild their program with more NIL, with different kinds of players, because Kalen DeBoer is an offensive coach and not a defensive coach, or Kalen DeBoer will get fired in 3 or 4 years. That's what I think.
So
Alabama.
This was tough for me because if you just threw the last 16 years of Nick Saban out the window and just looked at what's happening at Alabama right now, you would say that program is in great shape, right? I mean, Kalen, they got a coach who just went to the college football playoff. They got the number 2 ranked recruiting class next year. How could you not be excited? And it almost made me not put them on the list. But my default position is like, it's just a default position. Nick Saban was there and he's not there. By definition, you're on the decline when that happens, right? Just like if you are the Bulls and Michael Jordan retires, you're on the decline. Now, you don't have to decline the way they did, but you get my point. You're on the decline in those situations. And so just because of that, you know, I'm not one that I don't believe in the pattern of following a legend. I just think most of the time coaches don't work out. But because most of the time coaches don't work out, what are the chances you're going to have back-to-back Nick Sabans? It's never happened in football.
No, it hasn't. And we want to get to what down are we at? We're Coop. Tell me, huh? What? I think we're at third down.
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
We are at third down. Now, this one surprises me before we get to number 1. That's good news for Tennessee fans. I would argue even better news than if Georgia and Alabama were on the slide, because it'll help immensely in recruiting. But you've got Michigan. Now, you've changed on me a little bit. You seem to like Sharon more when he was hired. You compared him to Philip Fulmer and taking over for a legend. I think we were busy, and I didn't have the time to give you my full retort. But have you softened on that?
Well, the difference between the legend Philip Fulmer replaced and the legend Sharon Moore replaced is the legend Sharon Moore replaced actually won a national title at his school.
Right.
Sorry, unfair blow to Johnny Majors right there. But
no point in that, and it hurts, but that's fine.
Well, Johnny Majors was a problem in the sense that he always lost one game he should have won every year at Tennessee.
Okay, let's get to Sharon Moore. That's going to be an utter disaster.
To Sharon Moore, I think Sharon Moore is actually a very good coach. I don't think Michigan can replicate what they just did on the NIL front last year. That was impressive to get all these. Remember Billy Donovan, Dave, at Florida when he got his starting 5 to come back another year after winning the national title? That's what Michigan just did on the NIL front. That's never being done again, guys. That's never being done again.
Are you talking about headed into the 23 season or headed into the 24 season?
Headed into the 23 season.
Right.
The way they got everybody to come back.
Right. They were an older team, and you're right. They were a mature team, took advantage of both the COVID and NIL to be an older football team. And I thought it was pretty evident that they were men in September when there were a lot of boys running around in college football still trying to find their way as far as physical maturity. Now, number 1, I'm going to argue is bigger for Tennessee than Georgia. being on the decline. Okay. And I'm going to do that in 15 seconds. I got to tell you, the show's represented by Neubert Collision Center.
5th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe. All SEC Center Cooper Mays here. 4th down.
You are all SEC, sir. And number one is whom?
Number one is very obviously Clemson. They have been on the decline for 3 years now, and that decline is not slowing down anytime soon. It's picking up.
Okay.
And
now, you and I have agreed on a lot of things today, but I don't think you're going to get me on this one. And I'll tell you why. I think Clemson is doing a good job of shoring up their recruiting in that area in South Carolina. They've had some success there. They're number 13th in the nation with their 2025 class. And I don't think Clemson wins another national title. So maybe that by definition is on decline. But Caleb, I think that Clemson is relevant, a tough out, and a good recruiting team for 2 or 3 or 4 more years until Dabo hangs it up.
so I think
Maybe that is on the decline.
that's a decline, yes, and I think it's a little more rapid than you think.
Okay.
Dabo Swinney's getting very flustered with the way fans are coming at him. I haven't seen coaches do this in the past, where to be this successful and then be this upset with the way fans are coming at him. And
let me ask you this: what did Clemson do in their last bowl game?
What was their last bowl game? Actually, I didn't even pay attention to it because I don't think they cared to be there.
No, they didn't. And that's I want to go back to the 2022 season that finished that up. And it's one of the things that Clemson has going for them is they like to play hard for their coach. And they did not do so against the Vols in that Orange Bowl. Would you agree with that?
They didn't do so at all. They did not bother to show up.
Okay, so that's the signature of a Dabo Swinney team. So that's a sign to me that you're losing a Dabo Swinney team. Or Dabo Swinney is losing his team. You play Kentucky and the bowl game, you win 38-35. Are you on Kentucky's level now? Is that what you are?
Not on Kentucky's level, but close. And I'm going to draw a real quick comparison, David. This may be so unfair to Dabo Swinney, but I'm going to do it.
I think it may be way closer than you think because Kentucky plays in a tougher conference.
Okay, possibly, but that's the part is by being in the ACC and being stuck in that back contract that they can't get out of and constantly publicly fighting to get out of. Clemson's going to have a harder and harder time recruiting. Now they're not going to miss playoffs because the college football playoff has those auto bids for ACC schools and they can sneak in an ACC title. But here's the thing: Dabo literally was telling fans last year that they're part of the problem. You heard those call-in shows, right?
Yes.
Dabo. Some people were like, "Oh, Dabo's backing his team." No, players know when the coach is trying to cover for himself for actually backing his team. And I'm going to call him out. We love him on the show, but Ron Slay said to me one time that when Jerry Green said fans can go to Kmart, he really showed he had our back. Well, Ronnie may have showed he had your back, but you guys didn't feel like he had your back because y'all lost like half the rest of your games after he said that. Okay, so it seems more like when Jerry Green said that, you may have thought he had your back, but what we all saw was Jerry Green was kind of trying to cover for himself, and that seemed to infect the basketball team. Now, Dabo Swinney, what he's saying seems to be covering for himself, which I think is going to infect the football team even more.
No, agreed. Okay, so Tennessee loses out on Josh Petty, a highly rated offensive lineman that it's been reported by On3, I believe, was paid $800,000 to go to Georgia Tech. Now, we've talked about how Georgia Tech being relevant in recruiting hurts Tennessee. But I don't think Georgia Tech can shell out $800,000 per player. And I think Tennessee is ahead of Georgia Tech, as they should be, in NIL understanding because they're paying players. They had to pay Nico to make a splash. I get it. But they're paying players now to stay, not to come. Certainly, everybody gets a little bit of some cash to come. There's no question. But paying $800,000 for an offensive lineman, sure, you got him. But Caleb, what is Georgia Tech's budget? At best, I would think it's $7-8 million. They might have just paid 10, 15, 20% of their NIL budget on one player, a very good offensive lineman, but one player. Tennessee's not dumb enough to do that.
No, not at all. And the report was they lost, it was over $800,000. And people are trying to make a big deal because the narrative is Tennessee has the largest NIL collective. How could they lose an NIL battle to Georgia Tech? Because you have to look at how the NIL money is being spent. Tennessee is spending their NIL money to keep players around who are valuable and making sure they don't lose them to either the NFL draft early or the transfer portal. They want to keep the known commodities. Now, Georgia Tech, I told you guys yesterday they're a surprise program on the rise under Brent Key. I still believe that. They went 7-6 last year. They are actually recruiting very well in the ACC right now. I think what they're trying to do, Dave, is they're trying to make a splash early with NIL money and then have success with that splash and hope that transitions to them getting a lot more recruits down the road. But the truth of the matter is, I don't know if they thought that far down the road. This seems like a very Ole Miss move, just not via the transfer portal, but via the recruiting trail. And that's a lot riskier.
And don't think that Tennessee truly got outbid, guys. I mean, let's be honest. If you wanted to, you could call up Pilot and get the whatever money you wanted for that player. So you can be outbid for a certain player, but that's because you're not willing to pay the money. And again, getting a guy like Nico, who is arguably the top player in his class, him and Coop Manning, that is way different than getting even the best offensive lineman in the nation. To me, this is just a major red flag if I'm a Tech fan.
Yeah, this is weird too to me. You're right. Tennessee, like, we're not going to pretend Tennessee didn't go for the early splash. They did. They went for Nico Iamaleava. That was a splash. They wanted the splash to get the dominoes to fall, and the dominoes have fallen. You go for a splash on a left tackle. One, Tennessee's not going to do that for Nico Iamaleava again. They're not going to do that for anybody anymore. They did that one time when they needed one early splash. It's like when you trade up, you know, you want the one quarterback. So, Dave, you trade all of your future draft picks for like the next 4 years to get the quarterback.
Right.
Right.
Great comparison.
You do that one time. You don't do that anymore. You never trade all of your future draft picks to get an offensive lineman. Ever. There's not an offensive lineman worth that. I think the only person, you never do it for a non-quarterback. The only person dumb enough to do that was Mike Ditka with the Saints when he traded everything to get Ricky Williams, right? Wasn't it Ricky Williams?
Yes, he traded everybody and took the day off, smoked a big cigar, and for some reason they dressed up in like they were getting married on ESPN the magazine, which was very bizarre. Let me play the other side. Matt says, like us, paying too much for Nico put us in the running. Matt says worth it. The publicity alone has put Georgia Tech back in the media's mouths. I'll give you that, Matt, but I don't think $2 million for a top flight starting quarterback in this current era of NIL is too much money for Nico or anybody else.
It's certainly more reasonable than $800,000 for a top flight offensive lineman who is not unanimously considered the best offensive lineman in the class. He's just considered one of the elite ones. This is just one blue chip. Tennessee was not. This is why he's at Georgia Tech. Other schools were not. Every other school was not going to do this. So Georgia Tech, this is where I'm thinking Georgia Tech has the Ole Miss strategy right now, which is, for you guys who don't know, Lane Kiffin has basically convinced the boosters to spend way more money than they plan to spend on a regular basis to get him one team that he thinks can make a run at a national title. And I think Kiffin believes if he can make this run this year, that he will be able to just recruit regularly at that point, or he'll get another job, one of the two. I think Georgia Tech believes that they can make this run with one recruiting class, they can long-term have success. Now, Dave, I got a random question for you. What's a riskier strategy, Ole Miss's or Georgia Tech's?
To build a program or to have a great year?
To build a program.
To build a program, it's definitely got to be Ole Miss's because you could implode, couldn't you?
Yeah, but so could Georgia Tech. You get a top 20 recruiting class. Does that matter anymore? They can all transfer in a year.
Here's the other problem I have. If you pay Nico, listen, I've talked to a lot of players who said the quarterback's the quarterback. He got the best looking girl in high school. He gets all the love. We get it. He gets more money. We get it. But what is if he plays starting left tackle and the left guard's getting $100,000 a year and he's getting $800,000 a year? That's got to be a little awkward, right?
For the quarterback to be making 1/8 of the left tackle?
No, I'm talking about, well, that too. But I'm just talking about you've went out and spent money on an offensive lineman that's going to have 4 other offensive linemen. I mean, quarterback, it makes sense to spend more money on and to overspend because you've only got one player on the field. I mean, that's a place that you can spend more money, make sure you get it right. But on the offensive line, last I checked, Georgia Tech plays 5. So the left guard's going to look at the left tackle, who let's assume is Petty, and say, you're making $800,000 for doing the same thing I am. I don't believe that happens from players like, let's say, Omari Hand to James Pierce, because Pierce is an edge rusher.
Amari Thomas.
One
day you're going to get that right.
And Amari Thomas knows that. I don't believe it happens with Cooper Mays and Nico, because Cooper knows that Nico's the quarterback. And that's just the way things are. There are flashier, sexier positions. Tennessee may have a corner that's like that this season. Those positions have more of an impact. But I can't tell you that left tackle has 8 times the impact of right tackle or left guard. I mean, that's something that Georgia Tech is going to have to deal with in-house. That's different than the quarterback.
And that's the bigger reason Tennessee wasn't going to open the NIL checkbook. Left tackle doesn't have 8 times the position of another lineman on any team, but even less so on Tennessee, where the left tackle is not even as important as the center or the right guard, honestly. I mean, you guys can call me crazy, but I think the center and the guards are more important than the tackles for Tennessee and Josh Heupel's offense.
No.
And so I think that this shows that Tennessee they have the largest NIL collective, but they're not throwing money. They're very deliberate with what they do with it, right?
Yes. Yes, I think they're deliberate, and I think they're being really, really smart. Petty is a huge pickup. We don't want to sell him short, but he's also 6'4", 255 pounds. So that's, I know.
And he's not a unanimous 5-star.
Well, and I know Florida State, Ohio State, and Stanford we're all in it for him. But let's look at this from the outside looking in. Ohio State's spending money left and right. I mean, did he really have those offers, or did he say he had those offers? Were they committable offers? I don't know. Before we go down that rabbit hole, though, remember this. Tennessee has 21 commitments. They're number 8 in the nation. And I think they pick up David Sanders on Saturday. They'll be a top 5 class. They're running out of room. I mean, if Petty is a borderline guy and at 255, I almost guarantee you he is, how much did you really want that guy?
That's the other real question. I totally agree. And I think maybe they scouted well, because remember, Tennessee has been one of the teams, we haven't seen it yet, but a lot of the highly touted recruits guys that Tennessee signed, they identified way before anybody else did. That's kind of a known thing that they've been doing pretty well. And they were actually doing that well under Pruitt, but it's kind of a little bit different under Heupel. But so I do think they wanted this guy. I do think they wanted Petty. He's not a unanimous 5-star, but he is seen as a unanimous, very, very solid player who can develop.
Wanted or would take?
I think they wanted him. I think they wanted him. But I don't think they thought he was worth $800,000. And I think that put it this way. Josh Heupel's not not losing sleep over this. No. Josh Heupel's not thinking, man, I can't believe I didn't get Josh Petty.
No. Look at who the Vols signed this year. Bennett Warren, 6'7", 320 pounds. That's a little bit bigger, needless to say. Max Anderson, 6'5", 309 pounds. William Satterfield, who we've already told you is going to be a player this year. Satterwhite, 6'3", 300 pounds. I appreciate the catch. Jesse Perry, 6'5", 278 pounds. And I'm sorry, I almost left off. Gage Ginther out of Colorado, 6'5.5", 287 pounds. I'm sorry, but I'm just going to be frank with you. 255 is a major red flag. Major.
Okay, but to be fair, he could get up to 300. We got to remember this. There's a whole another year of high school for him to play. Then there's conditioning programs. But when you add all of that in, you can see yourself getting into the 290 range, 300 range by the time you are starting in college football.
I'm not saying I wouldn't take him because of it, but it's a red flag. Now, I want to know what he's doing with his offseason. Is he playing a bunch of sports where he's not able to put on weight? Or is he just not intent on putting on weight? Does he harbor, I don't know, some sort of weird notion about being a tight end? I mean, just 255 in and of itself is a red flag to me. Matt says we would have paid for Petty if not for Sanders. Possible. I don't think we're going to know, though, because I think Tennessee gets Sanders, and I'm going to tell you why here in a little bit. But first, Tennessee with the FPI, and they predict every Tennessee football game. 2 minutes, Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, Off the Hook Sports.
Fifth year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. If you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe Neubert Collision Center.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
23 F-150 Super Cab 4x4 STX, $45,985. 24 Ford Escape, $30,962. 24 Ford Maverick XLT, $32,720. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports,
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Some news: the Polynesian Football Hall of Fame revealed just now that Nico Iamaleava, linebacker Keenan Pili, and defensive lineman Jackson Moy were selected the 2024 Polynesian College Football Player of the Year award watch list. So I guess that answers our question. Is Jackson Moy Polynesian? Because you weren't sure at first, Caleb, but now you can say that Tennessee has a Polynesian pipeline.
I'm not so sure that the Polynesian Hall of Fame didn't get this wrong. I'm just going to say it.
Okay. Well, let's not take the honor from the young man.
Have you seen the Dave Chappelle stand-up where he is black but thinks he's white?
Oh yeah, the blind person.
The blind black white supremacist.
Yes. I don't know that comedy gets any better than that one skit.
One of the greatest skits of all time.
I mean, not just Chappelle. Doesn't matter your political beliefs. It's just ironically so funny.
It's hilarious.
I mean, even racist people should like that, to be real honest with you, because it's so funny. All right, Caleb. I guess it makes them look stupid. So there is that. All right, Caleb. So Tennessee, the ESPN FPI prediction is out. Let me tell you something about that. For one, they're sort of accurate. Tennessee has been predicted at 8.6 wins, winning 8.6 games this year. That's a 36.9% chance of making the playoffs. Now, if you want to look for ESPN's history, if you want to go back to 2023, that's last year, their projected win total was 8.2 games, and Tennessee went 8-4 in the regular season. We are talking about regular season, not bowl games. 2022, ESPN was way off, 7.1 games, and Tennessee won 10 games. So they have been hot and cold with Josh Heupel. If you want to go to 2021, it was 6.6, and the Vols won 7. So they've been basically on the mark 2 out of 3 years. All right. Are they on the mark with 8.6 wins this year, Caleb Calhoun?
No, but I understand why they're doing it, because I understand how the FPI formula works, and people can get mad at these formulas. These formulas aren't biased. They just can't quantify certain things. That this is why the BCS had to do a bunch of different computer systems back in the day, because everything had to quantify different things. And the FPI formula uses a predictive measure of the players on offense and defense that you have based on what they've done in the past and who you expect to start and based on their experience, and does a predictive measure of how many points you would generate or not generate in a game. It's very analytical, almost probably the most analytical of all of them. It's the same way like in baseball, with Billy Beane, they're like, how many runs can we generate with this lineup, period? And how many runs do we need to get to the playoffs? That's how the FBI does it, FPI. They then throw in road games, neutral site games, and tiredness coming off buys, things like that. That all of that goes into the play. You can't, I've told you guys this before, you can't factor in chemistry with things like this, and you can't factor in maturity from a week-to-week basis, which I think is going to favor Tennessee a lot more than it favors other schools.
Agree with that. We usually round up a lot of times with stats. So 8.6 would round up to 9, but you can't have 0.6 of a win. So I'm going to say they're predicting Tennessee with 8 wins. Okay.
We can go game by game.
Okay. But I want to go game by game, but it's 8 wins. If Tennessee just wins 8 games, pick a word to describe this season.
Disappointing. Hugely disappointing.
Yeah. I can't think of a word that's stronger than disappointing, but that's the word I would use. So how do you want to look at the schedule in terms of FPI? Do you want to look at the teams that Tennessee is most likely to beat, or do you want to go through
Let's just go team by team. Let's just go through the schedule real quick, and I'll give you the number, and you tell me if it's too low or too high.
All right, team by team, let's do that. If I agree with Caleb, here's what we'll do. We'll go, hey now. And then the old,
that's crazy.
If I don't agree with Caleb. So team by team, set me up. What do you got before we talk some David Sanders here in just a second?
All right, so we got Chattanooga. The FPI gives them a 99% chance to win.
Hey now.
Yes.
Why not 99.5? I think they're too low.
Okay, whatever.
Right. Okay.
That's fine.
So NC State, they give Tennessee a 69.4% chance to win.
Hey now.
It's almost a 70% chance to win. I'm fine with that.
I'm going to go 60%. I think this one actually is a little too high. But I think Tennessee wins, but I think NC State's going to be more difficult.
Okay.
All right, now this one's too low. Kent State, 98.5% chance.
Hey now.
That's fine. It's 98.
If Chattanooga's 99%, then Kent State should be 99.5%.
Oh, okay. I guess. I haven't studied.
I'm taking this personal. If I'm Tennessee, I'm taking that 0.5% personal. Josh Heupel should run up the score just for that 0.5%. Okay, sorry.
Okay, we're getting to real teams next. What team's next?
Oklahoma, 40% chance.
Oklahoma, 40% chance.
That's crazy.
Here's where I would put it, because I think Tennessee's a better football team, but it's on the road. I would put it at 50-50.
I put it at 50-50. I could have gotten with like 45%. I think 40 is just that's giving Oklahoma a 60% chance, a filibuster-proof chance of winning this game. That seems a little off. I agree.
Agreed.
Arkansas and Fayetteville, 74.5%.
Hey now.
I will say I agree with that now, but Arkansas is one of those teams where things could come together or they could fall apart. So I think that number is going to change. I think we're getting to the point in the schedule where these numbers are going to change significantly when we get to these schools.
If it weren't for Josh Heupel's issues on the road to this point, I would have it too low and say it's at 85%. But I think there's questions about Heupel on the road, which puts it at 74.5% for now. Okay. So next, Florida. Tennessee has a 70% chance to win.
Hey now.
I think that's way too low. I think Florida should be 90.
I wanted to go higher, Caleb, but it's Florida, and Tennessee always messes the bet against Florida.
I think it should be 90 against Florida.
Good Lord, they found 3 hernias on one of their best players last year to lose to Florida. It seems like they look for ways to lose to Florida. That's the only reason I'm not going higher, or I would go 80%, because I think that program is falling apart, and it happens later in the schedule. And I think Billy Napier will start to feel the pressure of that program. Who is up next? A very good opponent. 15 seconds brought to you by Ray Varner Ford.
Limited 4x4 $67,950. 2017 Ford F-150 Raptor SVT $41,950. 2023 Ford Escape ST line $28,940. Ray Varner Ford, built for the game.
Support our sponsors. That's why we're here. Ray Varner Ford in Clinton. Love him. All right. Who's next, Caleb?
The most toss-up game of the year for Tennessee, Alabama, but Tennessee's only given a 42% chance to win that game.
Hey now.
I think that's actually very respectful. I thought it was going to be lower.
Wait, you think they have a better chance of beating Oklahoma than Alabama? Given the fact that Alabama's at Neyland and Oklahoma is on the road?
Yes, I guess that's my determining factor. But I think I'm going to say the same. I'm going to put it at 50-50 because I think that's the swing game. I think that I'm trying to look at this from a totally impartial view. But I think Tennessee beats Oklahoma, and I think the swing game to whether or not they get in the playoffs is Alabama. So I'll put that at 50-50.
Okay. All right. That's interesting. I think it's actually the other way around. I think Oklahoma is going to be the determining factor, but I think it all is going to come down to NC State, because if Tennessee gets past NC State, they're going to light up Oklahoma and go on a roll. But that's a different story, different prediction. So moving on.
Now you're talking chronologically. I was talking non-linear, but that's true. I mean, what would have happened in 2022 had the Vols lost to Pitt? I
guarantee you they're losing to Florida in 2 weeks.
Yep. Who's up next?
All right, up next is Kentucky, November the 2nd. Tennessee's got a 79.4% chance.
Where is that game?
It's in Neyland.
That's crazy.
79%? I'll give them 70.
Really? You think it's too high?
Yes.
But wait a minute. You factor in the history of the Florida series, but you won't factor in the history of the Kentucky series?
Yeah, I'm going to go 70. It just feels too high.
Whatever. Maybe you're too high right now.
Right.
So, okay, next. Mississippi State, 83.5%.
Let me get you that answer. I want to remind you about our good friends at the Hemp House. After what Caleb just said, the Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards to ensure you only receive the best in CBD or Delta products. Use promo code HOOKED. That's HOOKED for 10% off. Hemp House chat with 2 T's. Hemp House chat with 2T's.com. Use the promo code HOOKED for 10% off. So where were we?
Mississippi State, 83.5%.
Hey now.
Got no argument with that. They could hold that on
yeah,
the
I'm
moon.
sorry. I'm sorry, and you guys can call me crazy. Kentucky and Florida, they should have a better chance of beating the Mississippi State. So if you think it's 83.5% for Mississippi State, you think it should be 90, then it should be 90% for Kentucky.
You like State's coaching staff, and I do too, but I think they're going to have to upgrade in talent.
I do think they will, but I think they can catch Tennessee off guard, because right after them, Tennessee's got to focus on Georgia, and this is Tennessee's worst percentage chance to win. It's in Athens. They have a 20.6% chance of winning this game.
Not 26, 20.6. A 1 in 5 chance. They play 5 games in Athens, and Tennessee wins 1.
I gotta say I agree. I agree.
Hey now.
I can't argue with that. I'm not saying that Tennessee can't upset, and I think 20% for a program that's at its peak like Georgia on the road is not bad. I mean, I'd be curious what Alabama is if they played at Georgia. You know, they've messed around, they monkeyed around with the schedule so much. I don't know if they're playing at Georgia, if they're playing. But what's the best program in the nation? Michigan, Ohio State, Texas. I mean, what program would walk into Athens and have a much better than 20% chance of winning against the Bulldogs and what we've seen in the past couple of years?
I don't think anybody. I agree. I don't think anybody. So, yeah, I think 20% is totally fair. And honestly, Georgia has the other part is matchups. Georgia is built on elite cornerback play. I mean, elite cornerback play, the way Alabama was. That's how you stop this Tennessee team. if you have cornerbacks fast enough to hang with the receivers down the field, that's how Tennessee's offense gets screwed, right?
Yep. All right, Caleb, who's next?
All right, 2 more. So UTEP, 95.8% chance. That might actually be too low.
Hey now.
I'll take it. You get in the 95s, 99s. It's a team you're going to pummel.
All right, now this is one that's too low because they're considering it a road game, and this is what the FPI can't take into account because it's not a road game. Vanderbilt. Tennessee is given an 85% chance to win that game.
An 85% chance?
84.9 to be exact.
Well, I mean,
they're like, that is total bullshit.
That should be like 95.
That should be 95. They're saying Vanderbilt and Mississippi State are almost equal type of games for Tennessee. They're not, guys. Mississippi State's harder.
No, I think Mississippi State would be hard. I think Mississippi State's harder than Vanderbilt. I think Mississippi State's harder than. That's a coin flip. Kentucky. I would take it as a coin flip, but I do think Mississippi State's going to be good long term. David Sanders scheduled to make his announcement at about 1:15 Eastern time on Saturday. I believe that he will pick Tennessee, and I have a prediction on Hooker's Corner in which you can read that and check out why I believe that to be so based off who I have spoken to in private conversations about his recruitment, people in the know. My question for you is, Caleb, if David Sanders does pick Tennessee, what does Tennessee's offensive line look like? Not in 2025, because I'm not going to say Sanders is going to come in and have an immediate impact. I don't believe that in freshman linemen. You may poo-poo that, but that's where I am. What would Tennessee's offensive line look like in 2026? I want to start at left tackle. Lance Hurd will be a sophomore this year. He'll be a junior next year. So you would think he would be the starting left tackle. Sanders, you would think, would be your other starting tackle, correct?
Correct.
Then I'm going to go William Satterwhite as your starter at center. And by default, I'm going to go Shamarad Umarov at left guard. I haven't heard enough good things about him. That's why I'm saying default. I'm not knocking his play. And then at right guard, I think you're talking about probably a transfer or one of the young players that is already committed to Tennessee. Aiden Bussell will be a factor as he's a redshirt freshman. So that 2026 offensive line, if it shakes out like I think it will, could be very, very good for Tennessee.
All right, so I'm going to mix around a little bit more. I agree with you with Lance Hurd and David Sanders because, again, I don't see tackles usually leaving early for the pros. You have to be insanely generational to do that, right, on the offensive line?
True, and this would be Hurd's third year.
Right, but he would be entering his senior year since he played at LSU last year. But yes, it would be his third year. I'll give you Hurd and Sanders on the outside. I think one guy you missed, a big name you missed, is Douglas Utu, who I think is going to be a star at guard for Tennessee. The guy that got out of Nevada from Bishop Gorman High School.
Fair.
I think Douglas Utu will be a star guard for Tennessee long term. He's already 6'4", 317. If he can get to like 325 and maintain his athleticism, I mean, you're talking a scary good guard. So I got Douglas Utu on one side on the interior. I think you're right with William Satterwhite stepping up at center. I'm going to go after William Satterwhite. I'm actually going to go with Max Anderson, the offensive line who signed in this class, who is a solid interior lineman from Texas. My understanding is he is a very smart player, which is very important for the interior of the line. Javonte Spraggins and Cooper Mays are both very smart. And so I think Max Anderson is that type of guy. I actually think what you might see is Max Anderson get a little center and then Satterwhite move over to right guard or something like that. But the other player not to sleep on for tackle, if Lance Hurd does leave early, is don't sleep on Bennett Warren. You can't do this in the interior, but at left tackle, you can definitely have a 6'8" guy, right?
Yeah. You can have a tackle who's 6'8". I think Tennessee, its fans should be very happy about how they're recruiting. I think there is a continued emphasis on player development. And you need to see that about Shamar Umarov. You need to see that out of Aiden Bussell, because Tennessee needs more people that they've recruited under Josh Heupel to develop. I think that'll continue to happen. I don't think the transfer portal is going to be as necessary for the Vols, but I think that Tennessee in 2026 could have a very, very strong offensive line headed up. They should have one this year as well. I'll remind you, we want to thank you for being a member of Hooker's Corner. And those that aren't, you can certainly sign up. It's very easy to do so. If you're watching our live show, we wrap it up with recruiting each and every day. But if you want to join Hooker's Corner, you get these recruiting videos right there for just $9.98 a month. You will get increased interaction with me and Caleb Calhoun. You will also get our recruiting coverage, and you'll get a prize as well. Somebody called me out. I'm going to get you your prize right there. Don't forget as well that you can win a Garmin watch thanks to our fantastic friends at Rick Terry Jewelry Design. And all you have to do is be a free member of Off the Hook Sports and Hooker's Corner and subscribe to the channel. It's just that easy. You can do that. But that Garmin watch is something special, and you don't want to miss out. Go to rickterryjewelrydesign.com. That is rickterryjewelrydesign.com. Also want to thank Don Self, State Farm. Customer service still matters. For over 40 years, they built their customers. They built their business on taking care of their customers in the greater Chattanooga area. Call 423-396-2126 or go to donself.net. That's donself.net. Caleb, do you have any doubt that Sanders is going to pick Tennessee? If you were to give odds, what would they be?
I think it's a 75 to 80% bet that he's going to pick Tennessee. I'm pretty high on him picking Tennessee.
Agreed way too often on the program today. Have a fantastic day, everyone. He is Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. We're with you each and every weekday at 10 a.m. And I'll remind you that we're also podcasting wherever you podcast. Apple, Spotify, does